He was wrapped in gold, laid to rest with weapons he never wielded, and 130 canes he never lived long enough to grow old using. Tutankhamun, the Boy King. A name etched into museum walls, documentaries, textbooks, as if we know him. But what if everything we think we know about Egypt's most iconic pharaoh is built on a lie buried inside his bones? In 2010, a team of scientists did the unthinkable. They took DNA from Tutankhamun's mummy and from 10 other royal remains, spanning 5 generations of pharaohs. What they uncovered shocked even the experts. Tutankhamun's parents were not just royalty. They were siblings, full brother and sister. A fact so taboo, so unsettling, it was left out of every school book and history class for a reason. This wasn't myth. It wasn't speculation. 11 out of 16 alleles, matching. Confirmed by CT scans. Verified by PCR. Replicated across independent labs. It was the first time science had ever exposed the hidden inbreeding of Egypt's royal bloodline with such clarity. But it wasn't just biology, it was betrayal. Because this wasn't done by accident. It was deliberate. For centuries, Egypt's kings married their sisters. Not for love, not even for power, but for purity. To protect the divine bloodline of the gods they claimed to be descended from. But what happens when purity becomes poison? Tutankhamun's short life was riddled with pain. His foot twisted. His bones are fragile. His immune system is weak. Malaria and necrosis ravaged his body before he even turned 20. And yet, he was buried like a god. Why? Why protect a boy who couldn't fight, couldn't lead, couldn't even stand without help? Unless he carried something far more valuable than muscle or might. Unless he carried a secret. That's where Graham Hancock enters the story. He doesn't see Tutankhamun as a broken king. He sees him as a vessel, a torchbearer of knowledge passed down from an ancient, forgotten civilization. One that didn't just build temples, but encoded wisdom into bloodlines. Tut wasn't just a pharaoh. He was a cipher. But if that's true, then who were the parents who made him? Because the DNA proves they were siblings. But it doesn't tell us their names. And when archaeologists want to find them, what they discovered, deep inside a forgotten tomb, changed everything. The tomb was labeled KV-55. The year was 1907. Inside lay a single, damaged coffin, stripped of its nameplate, its gold mask gone, its identity erased. A royal burial, but with every clue deliberately destroyed. Who was this man? And why would someone go to such extremes? To bury him, then bury him again in silence. For over a century, the mystery hung in the air like desert dust. But in 2010, science cracked open the tomb again, not with shovels, but with a swab of DNA. YSDR analysis revealed the truth. The man in KV-55 was the father of Tutankhamun. His genetic code matched that of Amenhotep III and Tut perfectly. This wasn't just a priest or a noble. This was Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king, the ruler who dared to erase Egypt's gods and replace them with one, Aten, the sun disk. Between 1353 and 1336 BCE, Akhenaten moved Egypt's capital from Thebes to a city he built from scratch, Akhetaten, a city for light, order, divine frequency. But his revolution wasn't just political, it was metaphysical. No temples, no idols, just sunlight and silence. To mainstream historians, Akhenaten was an unstable reformer, a failed prophet. But to Graham Hancock, he was something else entirely. A mystic, a memory, a carrier of ancient knowledge so dangerous, it had to be buried under layers of dynasty, time, and denial. The Amarna period wasn't just a political experiment. It was a spiritual rupture. And when Akhenaten died, someone made sure his name died with him. They ripped it off his coffin, defaced his statues, buried him without honor. But DNA remembers, even when stone forgets. And inside that DNA, scientists found another shock. Not just who his son was, but who he had that son with. Because next to Akhenaten's genetic code was the imprint of a woman, a full sibling, a queen whose body was preserved, but whose name vanished from every scroll. If Akhenaten is the father, then who was the shadowy queen buried beside him in DNA, but not in name? She wasn't buried beside him. She was buried beneath him, beneath time, beneath memory. beneath everything Egypt wanted to forget. Her body was found in 1898, in a side chamber of tomb KV-35, twisted and unwrapped, dumped next to a younger male and an older woman with royal jewelry. The archaeologists called her KV-35YL, the younger lady. No coffin, no shabdus, no inscriptions, just flesh and fractures. For over a century, no one knew who she was. But in 2010, her DNA finally spoke. Through advanced microsatellite analysis, the same method used in modern paternity tests, she was confirmed as the full sister of Akhenaten and the mother of Tutankhamun. Not a guess, not a theory. A 99.999% parentage match from nuclear DNA, verified across 2 labs, under the direct supervision of Dr. Zahi Hawass and Karsten Pusch. She was the daughter of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai, which means this unknown, unnamed woman was a princess, a queen, and the mother of Egypt's last hope. So why was she erased? No funerary items, no name, no mourning texts. Even her cause of death, traumatic injuries to the face and chest, suggests violence, not veneration. And yet, her DNA was preserved, her genetic legacy carried forward into the most iconic pharaoh in history. This isn't just silence. This is targeted memory loss. And it raises a question science can't answer. Was she removed from history because of who she was, or because of what she knew? Mainstream scholars say politics, but others, like those in Graham Hancock's camp, believe something deeper. They've found fragments, hints, anomalies, including an 1880 scarab inscription in Middle Egypt. A name, Meritor, meaning beloved of Ra. A princess, a daughter of Amenhotep III, and perhaps the mother of a cursed king. But if she was Meritor and the father was Akhenaten, then the bloodline wasn't just divine. It was a loop, a spiral, one step away from collapse. And the next clue was born still. That clue was wrapped in linen. 2 tiny corpses, buried beside Tutankhamun in tomb KV-62. In 2008, Egyptian authorities ordered DNA testing on the fetuses. By 2010, the results were in. Both girls stillborn, both daughters of Tutankhamun. And the likely mother? A woman buried without name in tomb KV-21A. But the match was incomplete. Too degraded to confirm with certainty. And so the door swung open for another theory, one that refuses to die. In 2013, French Egyptologist Marc Gabold presented a controversial idea at Harvard, that Tutankhamun's mother wasn't KV-35YL at all, but Nefertiti. Yes, that Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, queen of Amarna, lady of the long neck and perfect symmetry. To Gabold, the genetic data could fit, if you stack cousin marriages over 3 generations. Enough inbreeding, he argued, could mimic a full sibling match. A loophole, a genetic illusion. But DNA doesn't play politics. The 2010 JAMA study showed a near-perfect sibling pair between Akhenaten and the younger lady. Not cousins, not half-sisters, not in-laws. The numbers were too tight, the alleles too precise. Still, the speculation spread, because Nefertiti is too iconic, too mythic, to be excluded. And her disappearance after year 14 of Akhenaten's reign? Still unexplained. Some say she died. Others say she took a new name, Smenkhare, and ruled briefly as a male pharaoh. And then there's Graham Hancock's fringe circle. They point to an 1880 scarab discovered in Middle Egypt. It names a royal mother Meritor. Some believe Meritor was Nefertiti's hidden name. Others say it was Sitamen, daughter of Amenhotep III. Either way, both women vanish from the record, just as Tut appears. Which leads to the deeper question. If Nefertiti was not the mother, then why has her name been folded into Tutankhamun's mystery again and again? Why would a dynasty preserve her face, but delete her blood? If not Nefertiti, then who, and what secret justified deleting her name? Maybe the secret wasn't about her at all. Maybe it was about all of them. Because when scientists mapped Tutankhamun's genetic lineage across 5 royal mummies, spanning nearly a century of Egypt's 18th dynasty, what they uncovered wasn't a family tree. It was a genetic loop, a dynasty collapsing in on itself. It began with Uya and Thuya, powerful nobles from the mid-1400s BCE. Their DNA doesn't match typical Egyptian markers. Yuya's features were non-Egyptian. His Y-DNA hasn't been clearly classified. Some say he came from Mitanni. Others suspect Syrian roots. Their daughter, Tai, married Amenhotep III, the Sun King of the Golden Age. Their union produced Akhenaten. Akhenaten then took his full sister, the younger lady, as his wife. Her DNA confirmed it. Full sibling. No doubts. And from that marriage came a child fragile, yet divine. Tutankhamun. This was not rare. This was royal policy. Brother-sister marriages weren't whispered scandals. They were sacred law. The gods had married their sisters, so too must kings. But nature doesn't bow to theology. And so, over generations, the damage began to show. Tutankhamun's DNA revealed 11 out of 16 shared alleles between his parents. The level expected between identical twins. And the cost. A cleft palate, bone disorders, severe scoliosis, malaria, necrosis, a fractured femur that wouldn't heal. CT scans confirmed it all. Published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, February 17, 2010, the first time ancient royal disease was mapped through modern imaging. At just 19, Tutankhamun's body was already collapsing, a walking relic of his ancestors' divine obsession. But they crowned him anyway, because admitting weakness would mean admitting failure, admitting impurity. And still the damage didn't stop with him. Inside his tomb, KV-62, they found 2 miniature coffins, 2 infant daughters, mummified, wrapped in secrecy. And DNA would show these weren't just stillbirths. They were warnings. Because when you trace divine blood in circles, the end doesn't come with a sword. It comes with silence, stillness, and extinction. But one of those daughters held a twist even Tut's embalmers couldn't hide, and neither could his body, because what they buried in gold was a child already falling apart. The year was around 1324 BCE. When Tutankhamun died, no one knew why. Not exactly. Some whispered poison, others a chariot crash. But in 2005, his body was CT scanned for the first time. 1,700 cross-section images, bone by bone. And what the scans revealed shattered the myth. Tutankhamun didn't just die young. He lived broken. His left foot was twisted, echinovarus deformity, clubfoot. His right foot, flat and weak. He had no missing ribs. That was embalmer damage. But he did have scoliosis, a curved spine. And most telling of all, collar disease too. A rare bone condition that kills the tissue in your foot, slowly, painfully, piece by piece. This boy king, this divine ruler of the Nile, couldn't walk unaided. In fact, his tomb held over 130 walking sticks. Not for ceremony, not for show. Many of them were worn down at the base. Tut didn't just carry them, he leaned on them. Even worse, the scans found a clean break in his left leg. A catastrophic fracture, just above the knee. Type 33C3. Spiral. Shattered. Possibly from a fall. Now combine that with the DNA. Plasmodium falciparum, the deadliest form of malaria, found in his blood. Also found in his great-grandfather Uya and his mother, the younger lady. Tut didn't die from one wound. He was dying from all of them, all at once. A sickly boy, injured, infected, and barely able to walk, wrapped in gold and declared a god. But if this body was broken, why was his tomb filled like a god's? Why the treasures? Why the gold mask, the throne, the full royal arsenal, for a king who never led a war? Unless what they were protecting wasn't a king, but a secret. And the real question wasn't how he died. It's who buried him, and what they were trying to hide. Because what they buried with him was not just memory. It was lineage. Interrupted. 2 miniature coffins, tucked near the feet of a boy king, wrapped in linen, gilded in symbols, and left without names. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, he found over 5,000 treasures, but nothing more shocking than those tiny, silent bodies. At first, they were dismissed. Ritual objects, maybe magical decoys for the afterlife. But in 2008, that theory shattered. The mummies were scanned, sampled, sequenced. By 2010, the results were published. These weren't dolls. They were royal daughters, likely the biological children of Tutankhamun. The older fetus, about 37 weeks. The younger, roughly 5 months. Both girls, both stillborn, and both genetically linked to their father. Scientists identified allele matches consistent with Tutankhamun's nuclear DNA, including STR profiles seen in the earlier 5-generation pedigree from the same team that sequenced his family in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Their mother? That's where the evidence thins. Only one potential match exists. A mummy known as KV-21A, found alongside another female in an unmarked chamber in the Valley of the Kings. She carries the right mitochondrial lineage, the same as Queen Tai and the younger lady. That would make her a daughter of Akhenaten. Just like Tut, the most likely candidate, Encompassing, Tutankhamun's half-sister, his queen, and possibly the only woman he ever fathered children with. But DNA degradation stopped the confirmation short. The match was highly probable, but not absolute. What we do know is this: Tut died childless. The 18th dynasty died with him. No son, no surviving daughter, no royal funeral inscriptions for either child, not a single offering left behind, just 2 small bodies, unlabeled, unmourned. In ancient Egypt, even miscarried royals received divine rights. But these girls, they were buried like shame. Which raises a darker question. Was this nature's failure or political erasure? Because when the next ruler stepped in, he didn't carry the royal blood at all. And maybe neither did the last. In 2020, a new study shook the ground Tutankhamun was buried under again. This time it wasn't bones. It wasn't coffins. It was haplogroups. Genetic markers passed down the male and female lines. The Y-DNA of Tutankhamun, Akhenaten, Amenhotep III, all pointed to the same unexpected origin. Haplogroup R1b. It's the most common male lineage in Western Europe today. Over 50% of modern European men carry it. But in ancient Egypt, it was almost non-existent. Less than 1% of the ancient population, sampled in Upper Egypt, showed traces of it. So how did the most divine royal bloodline in Egypt's golden age end up with European DNA? Mainstream scholars suggest ancient migrations, trade routes, Near Eastern contact, Hyksos influx, foreign wives brought from Mitanni or Syria. Uya, Tut's great-grandfather, may have come from Akhmim, but his facial features, burial artifacts, and un-Egyptian mummification style suggest foreign roots. His Y-DNA, also R1b, but to Graham Hancock and others who think Egypt's rise wasn't entirely homegrown, this is a migration. It's memory, a trace of something older, a lost advanced civilization carried by blood, a remnant of a priesthood that survived a cataclysm, an echo of Atlantis encoded into royal DNA. He sees the R1b marker not as foreign contamination, but as proof of origin. That Egypt wasn't the start of a story. It was a continuation. And Tutankhamun, not just a king, but the final keeper of a map written in chromosomes. But what if this map didn't end in Egypt? What if the next marker points somewhere else entirely? Because hidden in the mitochondrial code, the maternal bloodline, lies another contradiction. And it might not just redraw Egypt's borders. It might rewrite who the Egyptians truly were. And that's exactly where the battle begins. In February 2010, the Journal of the American Medical Association dropped a bombshell. Tutankhamun's family tree, mapped across 5 generations using ancient DNA. The paper was rigorous. Tut's parents were siblings. Akhenaten was confirmed as his father. Mitochondrial and YSDR profiles lined up. Haplogroup R1b1a2, the dominant male marker, suggested unexpected foreign ancestry. But one man didn't buy the neat package. Graham Hancock. He called it a controlled narrative, a version of history scrubbed clean by institutions. In Hancock's view, Egypt didn't rise from sand and river. It inherited sacred knowledge from a civilization lost long before dynasties were born. In 2022, he lit a fuse. His Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse, claimed the pyramids, megaliths, and sacred geometries were fragments of a pre-Ice Age culture, possibly wiped out by a comet impact around 10,800 BC. He pointed to anomalies, flood erosion on the Sphinx, astronomical alignments in megalithic structures, the recurring symbol of resurrection encoded in temple design. Mainstream scholars were outraged. Zahi Hawass, the voice of Egyptian antiquity, publicly denounced Hancock, calling his claims a crime against archaeology. But here's the twist. Even the JAMA study, the very study Hawass led, left doors open. The maternal identity of Tut's wife, Enkhesenamun, remains unknown. The two stillborn daughters? No tomb, no offerings, no texts. KV-21A, the most likely queen, had too few readable alleles to confirm anything. Yuya's origins? Still debated. Possibly Syrian, possibly Indo-European. His burial style, unlike any Egyptian noble. And then there's the R1b mystery, found not only in Tut, but in Akhenaten, Amenhotep III, and Yuya, a European haplogroup in the heart of Africa's most iconic dynasty. Some scholars cite Bronze Age gene flow from the Levant. Others suggest intermarriage with Mitanni royalty. But no definitive source has ever been found, which leaves a silence, a coded silence, one not filled by science, but by belief. Because even if DNA gives us names, it can't always explain why those names were buried. And the next discovery might not be inside a tomb, but inside a drop of blood we've already tested and misunderstood. Or worse, a body we've never tested at all. In 2020, Dr. Yehia Gad, one of the lead geneticists behind the Tutankhamun Genome Project, proposed something unsettling, that the inbreeding inside Egypt's royal house may run deeper than anyone ever believed. Using allele-matching data from over a dozen mummies, Gad noticed something strange. Too many shared genetic markers, too close for even full siblings. As if some of these pharaohs weren't just marrying their sisters, but perhaps their mothers, or daughters, or nieces. One theory sent chills through the archaeological world. What if Queen Tai, the matriarch of the 18th dynasty, wasn't just wife to Amenhotep III, but daughter of his own father, Thutmose IV? Or worse, what if Yuya, her supposed father, was actually her husband's half-brother? Gad's team identified 3 critical mummies, never yet DNA tested. Amenhotep II, the grandfather, Thutmose IV, the father of Amenhotep III, and the KV-35 boy, a young male of royal blood, cause of death unknown. If Amenhotep II turns out to be the biological father of both Yuya and Thutmose IV, then everything changes. Yuya, the so-called outsider, wasn't foreign. He was a direct son of the royal house, which means the divine bloodline wasn't protected by ritual marriage. It was tangled in generations of incest deeper than any sacred text admits. And if Tai was both royal daughter and royal granddaughter, then Tutankhamun was not just the product of one generation's mistake. He was the final expression of centuries of controlled breeding, a body shaped by power, twisted by belief, doomed by tradition, and the answer to it all might still lie buried, because one body, one mummy, remains untouched. Its DNA could flip the entire lineage. But what if the truth about Egypt's gods lies in testing one more body? And what if the greatest secret was never in the body we haven't tested, but in the one we already have? Tutankhamun, scanned, sequenced, studied for over a century, yet still misunderstood. His genome gave us a map, a bloodline looping through 5 generations. Amenhotep III to Akhenaten, Tai to the younger lady, Tutankhamun in the center, a child born from symmetry, but buried in contradiction. His DNA confirmed the incest, revealed the disorders, exposed the broken biology behind the gold mask. But for all it uncovered, it left one question untouched. Who was he? Not genetically, philosophically. Because if Tutankhamun was the son of a heretic, the product of incest, the last breath of a dying dynasty, then why did his tomb hold such power? Why preserve a crippled king with more treasures than any pharaoh before him? Why bury 2 daughters beside him, stillborn symbols of a vanishing bloodline? Why honor his memory while erasing the name of the woman who bore him? Tutankhamun didn't build temples. He didn't fight wars. He died before his 2nd decade with a shattered femur and a parasite in his blood. But still, they called him divine. Because Tut wasn't just a king. He was a mirror, reflecting everything Egypt feared it had become. Not a nation of gods, but a kingdom clinging to ritual, long after the meaning had died. We mapped his chromosomes. We scanned his bones. But the one thing we never decoded was why his silence mattered so much. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not the gold, not the bloodline, but the questions he was built to carry. And the story he was never meant to tell.